Welcome everybody. Goosh, we're here. We're here again. Uh, Eric and Homa
Back
and
on
Will
punishment.
doing damage on the interwebs. So I'm hoping that
That's what we're here for.
yeah, that is exactly what we're here for. Uh,
Yeah.
so
But
I'm
we do have a
waiting.
plan. We
Yeah,
have a
yeah,
plan.
yeah.
We have a plan.
We got some kind of plan. Who's got the plan? Who showed up with a plan tonight?
Well, Eric, you're going to sing like you did
Yes,
last week, and then we're going to talk about the ramifications of the election,
right.
the many ramifications of the election for
Yes.
many different things.
Yes, so I think I will start with the words this week. We'll start with the words of Miss Asada Shakur. The first time I heard this particular quote, I was I was putting together a video for the National Museum of African American Music to talk about the music of the civil rights movement, and I was looking at videos of the Black Lives Matter movement, and their motto is, "It's our duty to fight for our freedom. It's our duty to win. We must love and support each other. We've got nothing to lose but our chains." And I did a little kind of call and response to that song, and I'll just sing it. And if you want to, everybody out there in video land, you could sing along in a call and response. Homa and Will, if you must sing, mute your mic so we don't get the delay. Not because
If
you
you
can't
must
sing,
sing, don't.
not because you can't sing, but because of the technology. So it goes like this. It's our duty to fight for our freedom. It's our duty to fight for our freedom. It's our duty to win. It's our duty to win. We must love and support each other. We must love and support each other. We've got nothing to lose but our chains. We've got nothing to lose but our chains. We are young, but we are mighty. We are young, but we are mighty. We are young, but we are strong. We are young, but we are strong. We must love and support each other. We must love and support each other. We've got nothing to lose but our chains. We've got nothing to lose but our chains. We are black and white together. We are black and white together. Many other colors too. Many other colors too. We must love and support each other. We must love and support each other. We've got nothing to lose but our chains. We've got nothing to lose but our chains. We must love and support each other. We must love and support each other. We've got nothing to lose but our chains. We've got nothing to lose but our chains.
Yes.
All right. So there you go.
All right.
Fabulous.
All right.
That was
That's
great.
so beautiful. Thank you, Eric. I
So,
always feel a
so
little undeserving.
Oh,
Like Very, actually.
So here's the question, right? Can we love and support one another right now? I mean, this is such a, where we were last week, we didn't know. Now we know that Joe Biden's going to be president. But yet, obviously, there's still a huge rift in this country. And probably that's not going to be closed anytime real soon.
Right.
Is love and support enough, I wonder,
I mean, I've been thinking about that quite a bit, and what I say to this is that 4 years ago after that election, people still managed to find ways to build community, and to be honest, the turnout, of course the turnout was higher, but there wasn't really a big difference in the country was still split in half like it was the last time. So I think that people's sentiments really haven't changed. And I was watching Dave Chappelle's monologue from Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
And like he says some pretty profound stuff, as he always has a tendency to do. But one of the things that he did say is, he says, listen, what we're experiencing, and when he said we, in this particular case, he was talking about black folk, is that, we have never actually been to a point where we haven't really had to deal with the stress of racism and all of this, just kind of volatility. And so, when you're speaking about it across the march of history, it seems like we're constantly living out this epic battle, every day. So, like, for me, I don't think that I'm very happy that maybe some of the just kind of the bombardment of it every day, just like listening to that kind of very, I don't know, harsh language every day, maybe some of that will dissipate so that we can have time to take a breath. But I think that people are still going to be working and doing what they've always been doing. I think that but I do think that they may actually be doing it with a little more hope now, which is good, But I'm not expecting some kind of revolutionary change, no matter who's in the White House. What do you think, Homa?
So much. Well, I think, there was a video that came out a few days ago of a Black woman in Washington, D.C., who's been one of the organizers of Black Lives Matter. And she was at Black Lives Matter Plaza. And she was saying that after the election, people in the celebration of calling the election for Biden, they plastered in Black Lives Matter Plaza campaign posters for Biden-Harris over the faces and memorial area of victims of police violence. And that's an interesting, it's a real tragic thing on many levels. And I feel like it is a symbol that who is in the White House does not solve that deeper wound. Even though there is progress, or, there are certain protections that I'm going to count on based on who's in the White House. So I don't want to take that away. I don't want to take that potential away, because I do think leadership matters. But I just found her really upset and yet eloquent words and presence very powerful, and a very powerful reminder that, of course, the struggle for racial justice does not end with an election.
Right.
And it's almost like the work has just to begin.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I also think, I didn't get to read the whole thing, but Tom Friedman had a post, op-ed today about truth, and just this basic, like, I mean, it kind of goes back to something, to what you did, Will, on the infodemic and the post-truth world. Like, if we can't even agree on certain basics that we consider as truth, then your song, Eric, "We Must Love and Support Each Other," is even more, it's really precarious right now.
Right.
It's so fragile. Yeah, so that's about
what's
14
interesting,
ideas.
that Friedman post today, he said at the end of it, he said, education must teach kids to be better critical thinkers and craft detectors and all that kind of stuff, which is great, right? All good. But I mean, there's been some other stuff that we've been reading. We sent out a link on our newsletter this week to this post or this essay where, and I can find it in a second, but he said, that's almost like just the surface. That's just a very kind of technical thing that we can do, right? If we want to quote Heifetz, right? But there are the real problem here with post-truth, post-democracy, post, whatever else falls in there, post-humanity, if you want to quote Otto Scharmer, is that it's cultural, and it's about tribes, and it's about not facts or information as much as it is believing what you want to believe because you can believe it and because the people you look up to believe it.
Right.
And I think we're seeing that play out right now. I mean, again, we could talk about this in a partisan way, but I think it's an objective way to say that one party in this country right now is hell-bent on not telling the truth.
Right.
And so the people who look up to those folks in positions of power are going to believe whatever reality that they're fed. And that goes beyond fact-checking. It goes beyond critical thinking. It has much more to do with tribal kind of, allegiance and the way that we kind of see each other. Yeah. And that's the scary part. I don't know how you deal with that. I mean, I think we talked about that a little bit last week too.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question though? And Eric, I'm particularly interested because you brought up that Chappelle monologue that he did.
Mm-hmm.
And what was fascinating to me was that he seemed to paint a picture of middle white America, kind of feeling the same struggles and going through the same pain in many ways that Black Americans have gone through. Was that kind of your take on that? Because I just found that fascinating that he was trying to make it seem to me like he was almost trying to make a connection that, where he said, come get your lessons, right?
Yeah. that was the punchline. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, how did you react to that? I mean, how do you kind of parse that? Because I found that really a fascinating viewpoint on his part.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that, the way I process that is, I'm always looking through the lens of history. And I think one of the things that he was saying is that, the difference between, and this is just my interpretation of it, the difference between, probably, middle class and, poor to middle class Black and poor to middle class white is that Black people actually understand that they have been caught up in some madness, and white folks have been made to believe that they have not been. And I think that, like, when we, when we look at, and let's take the labor movement, for example. The way that the way that our America's labor movement was kind of co-opted was that there was kind of a carrot that was given to white folks that were participating in that movement to basically betray Black people in within the context of the movement. which is kind of the story of American feminism and different things like that as well. But that has been a story that has been going on a long time. And you even see that playing out even with this election when you have people that are very clearly voting against their interests. Like there really
Right.
is no proof that it has gotten better for them um, by clinging to one particular party, right? And I think it's the same way for all of us. Like if I'm looking at the data, just as an average American, and I'm looking at least since maybe since the '80s, since the Reagan era, and I'm looking at the cost of living. I'm looking at the fact that in the state that I'm in right now in Tennessee, the minimum wage I think is still under $8. In Florida, it's 8.65. You have a small subset of American society that has increasingly gotten more acquired more wealth than ever in the history of this planet, and still, incomes in the middle class and lower has basically remained flat. So, Democrat, Republican, whoever, if we look at it from the perspective of justice, we're not living in a fair place, and we've never lived in a fair place. And I think that when Dave Chappelle says what he says, I think that in his own way, he's trying to tie people's destinies together so that we understand. Listen, if we want to, that the fight is not Democrat, Republican, black, or white. It's people that are. It is the human family against injustice. That's the fight. And so from where I'm sitting, like I can stand there, sing "It's our duty to fight for our freedom. We must love and support each other. We've got nothing to lose but our chains." I think that even in that little line that Asada Shakur penned, some 30, 40 years ago, that what she's saying is that, basically, if we want to get free, our freedom is through trying to work our way beyond these barriers and really understand that what we should really be fighting for is justice, not party, but the fact, but fighting to create a world that is just for everybody, and we can do that. And so that's how I kind of read what he was saying. But he wasn't the first person to kind of put forth that sentiment because, like I said, the labor movement lost because of this kind of concept that, oh well, okay, we're going to give you a little bit more, and at least you're not black, so we're going to give you this, we're going to give you this job, we're going to give you this. But now, if you look at this recent the book Dying of Whiteness, you look at what is happening to Middle America. Like they are literally dying because they're clinging to those outdated notions of race and all these different things
Right.
because they keep putting people in power that really don't care about them.
Right.
So that's how I read that, but I could be wrong.
No, that resonates. I mean, that makes sense.
Right.
I think it's so interesting, Eric, when you say, it's like you reframed sort of the fundamental problem and the fundamental goal of our need to come together and solve collective problems and seek justice that way. You said it in a better way, and I'm not repeating it properly. But that thing that you said, I feel like it's so like that is the kind of thing that can connect people.
Right.
And that goes back to the critical lens of our stories, how we frame, how we, like talking about, okay, these ancient myths that we never get along. Well, there's also stories of all these common things that human beings have always yearned, have always sought. And a lot of this can be framed in that way. And when I find, like, even in my work around global citizenship, in communities that are hostile to globalism, that they say, oh, I'm, I'm an American citizen. I'm not a global citizen. It's just a matter of how you reframe that conversation. I mean, it's not only that. If we could have a chance to like talk to each individual individually and sit down and have 15 minutes together, I do think so many of the problems could be solved, because
Right.
I do think there are these fundamental common hopes. And as long as you frame it in sort of an us versus them, even unintentionally, that's what people are hearing,
Right.
we're not going to get there.
Right.
So it's interesting, like Dave Chappelle, I didn't get to hear his whole thing because I actually fell asleep watching Saturday Night Live. So that's my typical story. Um, but I did hear that he moved to a rural community in Ohio.
Oh
And
yeah.
I think that's just really interesting because it's an example of putting yourself in a place and space that's not where people would expect you to be,
Right.
and have those conversations where people would not expect you. Um, and then you form these bonds. And that's like the kind of secret sauce of relationship.
Yeah.
And it comes with that proximity is one element of it. So yeah, it's kind of interesting when he speaks from that perspective too.
Right. Right. Right.
Just if you want to see more Chappelle, David Letterman did an interview with him on I forget if it's on HBO, maybe it's on Netflix actually, where Letterman has done these really interesting interviews with people. But the Chappelle video was at his farm in Ohio, and it was just it was just kind of, it was very interesting the way that he talks about place too, and why he lives there.
Right.
And walking down that main street and just kind of being a part of a community, that a very progressive enclave in Ohio, by the way, where there is a lot of respect for diversity and all that type of stuff. But yeah, it's interesting. It was a very fascinating interview.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, so it looks like Donald Trump is gone. Yay, right?
Yes.
But I'm wondering what you guys. I wonder what you guys. Not to.
Is he gone? Like, that's a good question.
Well,
that's the question though, right? So
that makes me nervous.
I was listening to a podcast tonight. I had a drive tonight, and I was listening to a podcast, and John Meacham, who is someone who's a historian and a very, I think, powerful voice in this conversation. But he said, the one thing about Trump the autocrat was that he was a really bad autocrat. If he'd been a good autocrat, if he'd been good at the work, he probably would have won the election,
right.
And he probably would have turned this country totally into a mess, or depending on how you look at it. But Meacham was like, don't be shocked if there are better autocrats down the road.
Right.
So it's like, how do we guard against that? How do we begin to be vigilant against the potential of another more effective Donald Trump? I mean, that's a very interesting question right now.
Wow. Yeah.
Very.
John was a classmate of mine at Macaulay.
Is that right?
What?
Yeah, we graduated in '87 together from Macaulay.
Yeah, he was talking about being down in Nashville.
Yeah,
older than you.
He lives down in Nashville.
Yeah, I know. See, that's black don't crack, baby. That's what that is. But
wow.
but I think that he has a point. I think that he has a point. If because I think about the management of the pandemic, and just like it was just like, I mean, it literally has been utter chaos for the past 4 years, and it started out like that. I mean, you think about at the beginning of the election, when we had all the discussions about Russia and interference, and I mean, it's been, I mean,
relentless.
Yeah,
relentless.
like just over and over and over and over and over, one thing after the other. You know, and then when you factor in, you know, when you're talking about the issues of police brutality, and then the pandemic hits, and you know, like, and I mean, literally, we've had fires, hurricanes, landslides, everything, tornadoes,
Yeah.
like it
Yeah.
has,
Plague.
and it has just been all of that. And so
Yeah.
I think that, and then like, well, then when you think about, you know, Puerto Rico, like all of these kind of bumbling things
Mm.
that people looked at, and they were, you know, I mean, but I think that that if he had have actually been effective at governance, he probably would have won.
Oh, I think so.
You know, and that's the thing, is that I mean, I feel like that was the thing, is that it had to do more with governance, because it's very clear that he has followers, but I think that he didn't have quite enough this time. I think that there were some folks that kind of defected, and that's why
But
he lost. But if that little handful had not defected, then he would probably still be president if he was effective at governance.
he gained millions of followers in the last 4 years. He you know, he's got, what is it, almost 5 million more votes this time around than he did the last time around.
Wow.
And how is it that so many people can kind of look at that and go, yeah, give me 4 more years of that. You know, it's just,
Yeah. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
and
one thing I
imagine,
struggle with,
Yeah.
we've been talking about 4 years. 4 years means ninth graders.
yeah,
If you are in high
just
school
wow.
now, you might be voting
Right.
for the next president. So if education has a responsibility to release critical thinkers,
Right.
to teach civics, to understand how the government works, to learn about the environment, to learn the science of global climate change, to learn about advocacy, to learn how to communicate, to learn who to communicate with, to learn the means of communication. I mean, can you imagine if schools were vehicles for critical thinking?
No,
I mean, there's
I
no
can't.
way.
I can't imagine that.
Can you imagine if schools taught communication skills, critical thinking, science, climate change,
Like
civics? I
real
mean,
world stuff.
Yeah.
What a concept.
democracy is hanging by a thread, and it is the mandate. Every high school student now can help decide what happens to democracy next. That is the mandate. That's it, right?
I would. I
And
would.
then
I would think
part,
so.
part of that is racial justice. Racial justice is a vehicle for allowing human potential to be released. You know, it's a means. It's a means to something big. What is going on?
Well, I mean, but see, this is where Will, you may have mentioned this earlier. This you know, culture. Like we're still, you know, I still think that because our thinking has been so fragmented, like I mean, just our capacity to think and uh, to analyze our environment. Like I even know, like even as much as I am kind of buried in books and engaged in this work, like sometimes it's just hard for me to focus and think, because it's just so much junk in the environment. It's so much of everything in the environment. And I wonder, you know, because it's not like, how do you address these things at the level of culture? That would be my question to bring to you all, because it's not just it's not just something for the education sector, and when I say education, I mean just for schools. Like it's not just for schools. Like the whole notion of learning in schools will have to be revolutionized, because what we're talking about is, we're living in a culture that that really has informed us as to what a human being is and how that's supposed to be lived out. What is our purpose? Accumulate, buy, you know parade our wealth, all these different things. And I struggle with that, like just the fact of trying to recreate myself in such a way that I even shift the things that I want for myself and my family. So how do we do that? Like, how do we address this thing at the level of culture, so that what grows out of the soil is just, instead of us always having to go back and try to address injustices after the fact, after they happen? Like, I mean, what do y'all think about that? Like, how do we address it at the level of culture and values?
So I think we should save that one for next week. So thanks for watching, everyone. It's been really fun.
Buddy, you still got 13 minutes
for my nap.
You got no, that's right.
Exactly right. No, but it goes back to this idea. You're right. It's not just schools. Schools in and of themselves can't solve this problem. Cannot do it. Right. And especially traditional schools. I don't think traditional schools can solve this, will solve this problem. Homa, that's a really nice kind of dream world you're living in, but that's not going to happen, because there are too many people invested in the old narrative, both monetarily and professionally, and just, in a self-worth sense, to change that quickly enough, maybe over time, but quickly enough for that to have an impact on the next 4 years. I'm not optimistic at all that we're going to graduate. The ninth graders that are in school right now are going to graduate in 4 years any much more ready to tackle the issues that are facing us and vote accordingly. I'm just not. That's not on the test, as far as I can tell. Right. So it does come back to, how do we do this in community? Right. It can't just be schools in isolation. So it's got to be, how do we come back? It goes back to the song you sang, I think, at the beginning. Like, how do we come together around this? I don't know what the answer to that is right now. I really don't. And that's one of the things that's very scary and very depressing. I mean, we've lost our sense of that. I think technology has had a lot to do with that. Social media has had a lot to do with that. All sorts of different things have had a lot to do with that. But I think that, if we're really going to solve it, it's going to have to be that we've built a greater sense of community with one another. And that we just get our brains and our lives around more common purposes with one another, But I don't know how to do that. I have no idea how to do that.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting when you talk about on the level of culture, what the pandemic is doing. The twin pandemics, Eric and I were just on a call. We were talking to a school and we were saying, we recognize you're tired, and, getting your school ready for opening in the midst of a global pandemic is really hard.
Right.
But every school in the world has to do that, is facing the pandemic, and thousands, millions, hopefully, are also facing the twin pandemic, which is racial injustice. And I'd say the triple pandemic of climate change and global catastrophe.
Right.
So it's really complicated, but infodemic. I mean, we are living in a state of crisis. We're living in a state of massive epidemic crisis. And so I think, the first step is acknowledging that.
Yeah.
And then, it's almost like work backwards. And I think, like, when you see the micro schools, the pods, the communities, the community-based schools that are sort of popping up all over, that's a really interesting model. And I'm looking at the Facebook Live. We have some people on Facebook Live, and one of them is an educator that I have recently seen, I know, Eric, you know him more,
Yeah,
Anthony
brother
Albert
Ant.
from
Yeah.
Atlanta. He's on your Facebook Live. I don't know if you're seeing
Yeah,
that.
I am.
But
And
Anthony,
yeah,
he says, true, it has to emerge from the grassroots organically over time. And I think in response to grassroots and a culture shift is collective consciousness building.
right,
So what can schools do for that in the few minutes we have left?
right. Well,
And it just really fast, just really fast. I mean, all of this feels so freaking urgent. You know
right,
what I'm saying? It's like,
Yes,
I get it's going to take over time. We don't have time. I mean,
right,
yes,
I feel like we don't have time. We have to do this stuff in a very kind of compact time frame, or it's going to be, yeah. I don't even want to finish that sentence, right? But so there's this sense of like, okay, I know there's no easy fix, but we need something to just. You would think that the pandemic would bring us together.
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
separated us. It's crazy. Sorry.
right. Well, and but I also think that
I know.
that's one of those cultural issues as well. Is that, I mean, like, even when you think about politics, what politics is really, at least in America, is an extension of warfare. That's what it is. I
Absolutely
mean,
right.
it's not gathering the people together. They're either warring in front of us verbally, or finding ways to take us into more wars, literally. you know, and 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 like, sometimes I just think about all the things that I see politicians arguing back and forth about, like healthcare or food for everybody, or like things that you would just
Basic
think,
human rights.
basic things that all human beings need, that we can afford to give actually every human being on the planet, if we would be willing to act like children, meaning share. Even children understand that. Even children understand that if there are 10 balls on the playground, it is not fair for one child to have 9 of them and 9 kids to have one. Like, that is ridiculous. Like, even children understand that. And so, and I also think that we should understand, like, I mean, I think part of it is actually being able to see the darkness, you know, and understand that actually, darkness and light, they kind of work together in a particular way. and, and I think that they're like the urgency that you talk about, Will, like, I think people, you know, it's funny because when I traveled to South Africa in 2000, it may 2000, or I think it was 2001, for this UN conference. I went there, and there were young people there that had grown up, and all they had done all of their lives is fought apartheid, right? And so now they were getting to they were about to hear Nelson Mandela speak at this UN conference. It was Nelson Mandela and Fidel Castro on the same ticket. And they actually have a book of speeches called "Look How Far We Slaves Have Come." Because Castro was the only one that was willing to help Nelson Mandela when help Nelson Mandela and the ANC free themselves from apartheid. And so they were on the same ticket. They were talking about all of this stuff. But I looked at these young people, and you could still see wounds from rubber bullets on their skin, on their faces, on their shoulders, on their backs. Um, and and I began to think about how like in America we're sitting here, and we're not doing great, but we are doing, you know if you live in this country and you have never seen any other place on the planet, like, we're okay, kind of, you know I mean, as far as like our access to things, like just the capacity to share could change our country like that. But we can do that. We don't have to wait for Biden or Harris or Trump or Pence or anybody to do that. You know, and that's the thing. We've been waiting for we've been waiting for Superman. You know, and Superman ain't coming. Like we are super men and women, and we have to be that. It's time for us to be that and quit waiting for people to do these things. If somebody is hungry, we don't have to write a grant to feed them. Give them some damn food out of your refrigerator. You know, like we can do that. And I don't understand, like it's like this society has just totally beat the goodwill out of us. And so it's like Homa, like when we talk about doing empathy audits at these schools and tell people that the data's already there, and also the capacity is in the people, you know, like we can do this. And I think that first of all, like can we take care of, just like, if we see somebody that's hungry this week, feed somebody, you know, carry around an extra pair of socks, a toothbrush, a bottle of water or something. You see, just do something good for somebody. And don't wait till the next grant cycle to try to get money to do something. Like, do it now, start it now. And believe that stuff can go a long way in kind of repairing a lot of these rifts. Because hungry people don't care where the food comes from. You know,
Yeah.
and I mean, it wears me out. Like, when people say that they want to be free, but we have given everything to be managed by somebody else. Our education, our everything, our politics, everything. We've just handed it all over to be managed by people that most of the time don't even live in our neighborhoods. So we don't really. I don't think Americans really want to be free.
Homa, you have 2 minutes.
2 minutes,
to,
Homa. Take us home
bring
with a
us home.
song. Take us home with a song. Precious Lord,
Well,
take
you
my
know.
hand.
Praise the law. Yeah.
Amazing grace.
Yeah, you definitely don't want that. No, it's just so much to think about. And it is so powerful to think about. Like, you have the power, you're the hero of your story.
Right.
And if we have teachers on this, we're working with schools. What would you do? What's one thing you would do right now?
Right.
Because the world is in the midst of multiple epidemics. And
Can't wait.
how can we let this go? I do feel, even just being powered by a sense of urgency with hope
Right.
as a discipline, that can be very empowering potentially, even as the world is feeling so weighty.
Mm.
Will?
Well, I think that's a great note to end on. Sincerely.
Yes.
We had to be done at quarter of. We got 30 seconds or so. So I think we'll leave it at that.
Right.
But for the millions of you that were watching tonight, hopefully that was an interesting conversation.
Right.
I know I found that really interesting. I'm gonna have to go back and watch it on YouTube.
Yeah.
But anyway, maybe we'll do this again soon.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's do it again next week, maybe. We'll chat.
Well, we're living in this moment in history.
Right.
And
Even if,
I hope we can contribute something
Right.
yeah.
to help advance whatever that goodness might be.
Right.
So thanks,
Good night,
guys.
my friends.
Thanks, everybody.
Y'all have a good night.
Stay safe.
See y'all
Stay
next
sane.
week.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.